Because I'm shocked that that was what, because once again, you're the first person I've heard say actually the transferring money part, because so many people go, oh, I write them because of comp. I write them because of this. And I'm like, okay, like that's interesting. But you're giving the client an actual thing they can do, which is, hey, when you pull money out, this is what the process is going to look like. That's a big deal. So when you're running IULs, and by the way, I love your process. It's so solid. Um, where do you primarily take your like let's say the client's perfectly healthy, you had a carrier of choice. Where are you leading with first? Is it F&G? Is it NLG? Do you have a preference?
What's the dollar amount?
$500 a month?
So if it's 500 and they're younger, well, that this is where the magic happens, right? This is what makes you better than the guy calling from a call center is, Stephen, are you planning on putting at least $10,000 a year of any kind of bonuses you get from your job into this policy?
I don't get $10,000 worth of bonuses. I wish I did, or else I would.
Okay. And do you have any money in the gun safe or under the mattress that you were trying to move over here to avoid the tax code so there'd never be capital gains on it?
I have some Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, you can once you get that into the bank account, you can move that over. Um, so I uncover the money. So
Okay.
I get pretty into it. And then to answer your question, if their hard numbers 500, if they're under 40, I'll probably go NLG.
Okay.
Uh, anywhere else, I would just put through Americo because
So
Americo's the cheapest cost of insurance for their money. So if they're not as interested in be their own bank, but they want cash value, and they're not going to be, looking at it on the app on their phone, and they're not going to really be borrowing against it for the first 5 years. It's more about for their retirement, but they really are going to know they're going to be on a budget for several years. The MEC amount that you can put in, so on a 40 something year old, is still going to be over 100 grand. So there's still room there for them to dump extra money in.
now when do you decide to go with an NLG versus a F&G?
So F and G, I will only go with if they have a lot of health complications.
Really?
Yeah. The reason for that is I choose NLG because their technology is more customer facing and the retention to keep the clients on the books, I think, is better.
Okay.
Uh, F&G, their system's a little bit old fashioned. If you want to transfer money, you got to call, you got to do a DocuSign. If you want to do anything, you got to call and do a DocuSign. From your iPhone or Android, you can have the NLG app and you can Zelle 50K out of your policy unlimited times a day if you have the cash value.
Mm,
You
that's
can
awesome.
also change the payment amounts when you want to max fund it from your phone. So you can link your bank account to the phone, to the policy. So those are steps that a lot of people are pretty interested in since everybody's got a smartphone and the phone's like
Right.
their computer. So F&G will write policies for smokers, people who are, are AIDS survivors, cancer survivors, people who have a lot of anxiety or depression medications. You have war vets that are PTSD, but they're also on pain management. So the really good thing about them is you can call them and lay out, your financial footprint and health footprint of the client, and they'll be like, yeah, it could be a table 2 through table 14, submit it. But they don't say don't submit it. They just say the cost of insurance could be higher.
Right.
Where NLG will also kind of mitigate that. But I notice with them, my approval rate is over 70% with NLG because I just think about it before I do it.
Right.
So if they have diabetes and they're a little overweight and they smoke, cannabis, big deal. But if they've got, two or more medications for one diagnosis, uh, and anything that could lead to complications or any type of surgeries within 5 years or any kind of neuro damage, um, or pain management that for a long time because they have disc uh, issues, NLG seems to be, or sorry, F&G seems to be a little bit more lenient.
Got it. That's good to know. So they're more lenient, but they're not as customer facing as NLG is. Hmm.
Right.
Interesting. Because I'm shocked that that was what, because once again, you're the first person I've heard say actually the transferring money part. Because so many people go, "Oh, I write them because of comp. I write them because of this," and I'm like, "Okay, like that's interesting." But you're giving the client an actual thing they can do, which is, "Hey, when you pull money out, this is what the process is going to look like." That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. Okay, cool. Um, wh- do you ever like what is your fine line between going simplified issue, right, with an America with a Moo versus going with a, NLG? Well, like what are your determining factors? Because you said something that was money. I think a lot of people skipped over it. You said
Well,
10x their income
yeah,
or 10x their age. Sorry, 10x their age,
yeah.
right? And I was like, oh, that's good. I never heard it said that way. What are some of the determining factors that you make them go one way or the other?
That's the biggest one is what their budget is. If they're below 500 bucks, it's going to go to Moo or Americo right off the gate,
Hmm.
unless they're in their 20s. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing late 30s up to 60. So if their budget's that low, we're going to get the cheapest cost of insurance through Moo and through Americo. And it's going to go through the system in 24 hours and your agents get paid.
Right. All right. Next question. Um, so schedule. You said 10 hours a day. You're making phone calls. You do a lot of appointments, doing one call closes. Um, how often do you use automation or dialers or whatever it is to have your
Every
appointments
day.
filled? Okay.
Every day. So I'm using Lead Champ Pro, which is Josh Lockhart's CRM that he built off Go High Level. It's all for nurturing the client. So every tool you would ever need to send, every drip campaign, appointment, everything's built in and completely customized to all the carriers we cover, even though I only ever write four. And then it's synced and works my dialers Kixie.
Got it.
So now when I say 10 hours, that's probably a Sunday because I do 12 to 14 pretty all of November. I did 12 to 14 hours, 7 days.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. And the last 3 months, it was pretty consistent. Um, August, I did 116, September 100, October 142, November right now with week 3 in there, I'm at 94. My team is me and Francesca together, starting at the bottom, August 216, 196, 281, 182 in November currently. So the two of us really have the non-negotiables is really important. So when you do a 4-hour block, I don't check my email. I check it in the morning at 3 a.m. and I check it before I pass out. And I address anything that needs to be addressed for the next morning. But I don't, unless I'm in an NLG or a Moo doing a guaranteed advantage and I have to go in and put my numbers, I don't mess with it. All my social media is off. I don't get any alerts on it, except my alarm um, to walk my dog. Sorry. Um, yeah, except that one. I basically am hyper focused on calls and I don't unmute during that time. Um, we tag team the appointments. If I'm on with a client and we have three back to back that are booked, all are overlapping, my partner just pings me, "Hey, you selling?" "Yep." "Okay, I'll hit these appointments." One of them shows of the three if we're lucky. Sometimes none of them show. Sometimes two do. And I'll put a client on pause and call a client on my cell phone and say, "Hey, I'm still in a meeting. Can you do it in 45?" And they're fine with that. They know we're busy. But the activities are so key. When I got here, they're like, "Oh, you have to have 30 appointments a day to get maybe, 5 or 10 to even show up to sell one." And so we're doing 25 to 35 appointments a day now for 3 months, and we're getting over 25 no shows. And then we're getting people who are not qualified or too broke, but we're giving them guaranteed advantage or we're helping them with a small
Right.
policy. You got to sell what can be sold. So I identify whether or not we can even help them within the first 2 minutes of the call.